This is another DAM podcast about digital asset management. I'm Henrik de Gyor. Today I'm speaking with Chad Beer and Michael Hollitscher about NYC DAM, the New York Digital Asset Managers Meetup Group, the world's largest meetup group about digital asset management. Chad, you're the founder of this meetup. Tell us how it all started.
Well, I was working as a DAM manager in about, 2009. I was looking to move on to sort of the next challenge, the next job, and I needed to deepen my education about DAM and just needed to network and get to know more people in DAM. And I'd gone to conferences and just wasn't sort of finding the connections I wanted to find. I wasn't connecting with people who were sort of talking real sort of nuts and bolts about their jobs and how they do it. I got connected to Meetup through a friend in an unrelated industry, and I had gone to some other types of software meetups and was amazed that there were no DAM meetups. Just out of frustration and out of wanting to get people to tell me about DAM, I thought, I'm going to start a meetup. I saw Mike speak at a Henrik de Gyor conference, and I liked his presentation. I liked how his thinking worked. I approached him after his talk and asked if I set up a meetup about DAM, would he think that'd be something he'd want to be involved in? And he was very positive about the idea. So that was sort of the first piece of encouragement I received that was outside of my own head. And I just went online and started up the group. And the first meeting we had was me, Mike, one other member, and my boss and my boss's boss. So it was a tiny group. Mainly my bosses came because they wanted to see what the hell I was doing using up a conference room in the evening, and also to wish me well. And so we started with a first meeting of 5 members, and we talked about what the meetup should be about. It was a very broad kind of kickoff meetup. I love that Mike was there from the start, from before day one, really. And then we just started winging it and setting up topics that we would find interesting. We were doing the presentations ourselves at first, and it didn't take long. As soon as we found somebody with some expertise and who was willing to talk, we started getting people who had shown up to the group to talk at the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and it grew from there.
Mike?
It's funny because, thinking about it, there was really sort of space for us to fit into in the beginning that, we joked that going to digital asset management conferences was the 1 or 2 times a year that you didn't feel totally alone, and you could actually network with people and have and actually like really interface and compare notes with the people who are doing this job, which 5 years ago was something more of an obscure sort of trade to be involved in. Now I think it's become this sort of something that's becoming more and more ubiquitous every day in terms of how to manage digital content. And it was, we were able to just sort of fill a niche that a lot of people didn't really know was needed. What Chad was talking about in terms of like how we just winged it, it was Mickey Rooney, like Judy Garland sort of like, let's put on a show thing. And we just sort of kind of did it a little guerrilla style, hosting it at places of work that we worked at. The people we were involved with seemed like it was a perfectly fine thing to do. And we slowly built up our membership, kind of trying to think of interesting topics. In the end, that's really been like the thing that's driven us forward and made it and really kind of gotten us to the point of our relative popularity now is that we really wanted to talk about the things that are necessary, that were really sort of like critical to us in our daily work days. We also wanted to like make sure that people who are showing up were fully engaged and really understood like the key issues that we were dealing with at the time. It's pretty amazing to think that it's gone on for 5 years at this point. So much has changed in the landscape from a point where DAM was, like I said, just at that point kind of emerging from a backwater to really a critical part of doing business every day.
I had no global perspective when I started it at all.
Yeah.
And I agree with Mike that we totally filled a niche that was not only ready to be filled, but there was an audience for it. And we didn't know this. I knew I was interested, and I knew Mike was interested, and I knew we had a common sensibility about metadata management. So I knew we kind of were aligned on a strategic level, and that was it. And we were very lucky in a way that with our timing. And also our location. It helps. It's possible for us to do this meetup and to have it as robust and ongoing as it is because we're in New York. There's a critical mass of not only people, but professions that need DAM. So there's a critical mass of DAM people in a small geographical area, and we opened it up at what happened to be the right time in the practice's maturity. I think if we'd done it 5 years earlier, there wouldn't have been enough people to talk about it, or the issues wouldn't have been codified enough to bring in an audience. I don't think we would have known what the universal questions and problems were. There was a lot of luck and happenstance and timing and logistics, location.
Yeah, and really just sort of sticking with it. But it really came from the fact that I think it was like Chad and I just both wanted some answers, or at least to like have a discussion amongst our peers to figure out like, how are you doing it? How are you actually getting this work done? Or, what are the sort of hacks that you have to do, not only from a technological standpoint, but from a human standpoint of getting this kind of work done. And I think that's the big thing, the emergent thought that really has come out of the meetups. And Henrik, I know you're a big proponent of this too, is we always focus on the technology, but really the longer you do this, the technology really is sort of the least interesting part of it after a while. It's really how do you engage the human beings who actually have to use this technology? One of the real things that I think we've brought to the table in general DAM discussion in the world is just that you have to talk about the people, and you really have to talk about how you enable people, and the uniqueness of your organization has to like really work with your end users and your stakeholders.
We did want to engage on those levels, and in my mind at the time, the conferences weren't very strong on those fronts. I think they've gotten a lot better. They've come down from preaching lofty best practices that aren't really applicable to the day-to-day, and come down from vendor demos and things like that to more emphasis on use cases and more sort of nitty-gritty news you can use. But that was not really available much when we started this out. So we needed to talk to Mike's point, not just about the human level of the work we do and the kind of hacks people do, but also just sort of nuts and bolts how you get from point A to point B, how other professionals have done that. Mm-hmm. And also not only did we want to facilitate presentations, we wanted to facilitate community and some interaction, some easy networking. And the word community is really overused, but that's what we were going for. Conferences only go so far with that because they come at a pretty hefty cost. It costs a lot to go to a conference. And mm-hmm. we knew there were a bunch of people from small companies or, independent contractors, and certainly mm-hmm. students or recent grads who were never going to go to conferences, that we'd never meet and interact with. And the meetup was a way to bring all those people together too, with people who would also go to conferences. We felt like we were able to open doors up to a whole area of the DAM industry that couldn't really get into the conferences because they didn't have the funding. That's been a really valuable piece of it too. Also, Mike brings up a really good point. Just sticking with it was really critical. And, we've been doing it for 5 years, right? Mike and I have both been through job changes. And at some point or multiple points, we both hit kind of a wall where the demands of job or just home life have been a lot to take on, and didn't have the bandwidth to keep coming up with meetup ideas. So we were really glad, I think, that we had each other to bounce ideas off of and sort of hand the baton back and forth to. And this is where you come in, Henrik. It was when you joined us 2 years ago now, mm-hmm. you added not only more bandwidth, but a new perspective, new context, a new perspective on the industry that not only helped us kind of keep going, but helped, I think, enrich the content that we bring to the presentations every month. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a question? Could you tell us about what it was like for you when you joined the meetup, or how you decided you wanted to join the meetup?
Yeah, I actually also had a job transition, and I had a lot of time actually, to spend in New York, thankfully. I'm actually a Virginia resident, so I commute to New York on a regular basis. I was thrilled to be engaged with very thriving, literally a community of digital asset management professionals like yourselves and all the members, and only wanted to see that grow. As a content producer for my blog and podcast, I know that content is king, and if you produce good content, especially in person, people will come, especially if there's networking involved before and after, which we do that with the meetups too. So I wanted to hone that, focus on things that we hadn't focused on, and look at all the different topics that are out there. And there's plenty, and there's only more to come. You started this in July 20th, 2009, and we're coming up to a milestone. We'll be announcing our 5th anniversary at a very special place. I was really excited to just come up with topics as often as I could, and the speakers whenever I could, with your help, to get the community engaged and different parts of the community as far as who's using it and how they're using it, and not just the technology, but obviously the people, that comes first, and then also the processes and the information that are involved to one degree or another.
I think probably the best thing I ever did after starting the meetup was not trying to do it alone. I was never under the illusion that I could do it alone or that would be a good idea, but this whole thing has been a real lesson to me that just in the value of collaboration and bringing the more heads at the helm, the better. It helps, of course, that we're all like-minded to a great degree, and I think we all knew that about each other before we got involved. The meetup is as strong as it is and still going because everybody being involved, not just us, I mean all the members too, who also feed us some great ideas.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, I would love it if there was more community involvement in at least getting ideas flowing and identifying people who could speak. I would love it to be a real kind of soapbox for a lot of people in the DAM community.
Yep. Getting more people engaged, whether it's the organizers of the events, such as us, or the people who are hosting these events, because we're always looking for great locations that can host 50 plus people, and that's typically how many we have on a regular basis. Now that we have, at the time of this recording, we have 680 members plus. We've doubled it for over a year ago, which is pretty amazing.
Speaking of locations, that brings up another sort of economic issue, but I think I'll just bring up the cost of locations. We've been challenged to find good locations because we have managed to keep our meetup group vendor neutral. When we've been fortunate enough to get some sponsorships, mainly to fund video and the video recording of some of the meetups, but their sponsors have been very hands-off, just asking that we sort of promote them with logos and credit, etc. I think keeping some financial independence from any outside influence has been a limiting factor in that we have no budget for a lot of spaces we could otherwise afford, but it's also maintained a degree of integrity for our meetup and allowed us to steer our own ship, and we can have whatever speakers we want, and we don't have to worry about any conflicts of interest from an economic perspective, and I think that's been huge.
I agree.
I can't believe it's already 5 years.
Yeah. We're so young once.
Yes, 5 years.
Yeah. We've all gone through job changes since getting involved in the meetup. So it's funny, the meetup evolves, we're evolving as DAM professionals, and the industry's evolving out from under and all around us at the same time. Yeah.
It seemed like it was easier to do when I was like first 2 years. I mean, I was in grad school. I was working a full-time job, and also we were doing generally a meetup a month at that point. And I look back now and I don't know how I managed that. It was
same here.
Yeah, and it's a greater challenge now. I think I'm challenged more in my work now. I think there's more topics that we could cover. I think there's probably more things to think about, but it's not just about DAM anymore. It is about the whole content life cycle, and I think that's probably like maybe the more exciting stuff. Maybe where topics will evolve is more towards like, where DAM is an aspect of what we're talking about. It's really about the creative process. It's really about the process on the web, about content determination and content access and analytics and all these sort of things where it's like DAM is sitting at the bottom and feeding out, but it's really a question of how it ties into a lot of much larger issues. That's what I'm interested in talking about. It's just a question of how we kind of put it all together.
And there's going to be tons of that as far as conversations and meetups in the near future about that.
Yeah, and that's what we have to figure out. Those of us, for those of you listening in, that's something that us three have to kind of sit down and figure out. What are we going to talk about? That also, as Chad mentioned, that also comes from our user group too, and some of the great people that we have, who are sort of like de facto advisors at this point, or kind of thought leaders who help influence our thinking as well.
Not only has our work-life situations become more complex, but the industry's gotten more complex, and also our questions are more complex. When we started out, our questions about DAM were very simple. And now I think just where our thinking is, we're thinking on a more complex level based on sort of fed by the work challenges that we've seen, but also the meetups that we've seen other people present. I just feel like the game's gotten more complex. Mm-hmm. Just reiterating Mike's point, it's no longer enough to just have one simple talk about metadata scheme as one person did. That'll always be valuable, but man, there's so many more pressing issues now about file acceleration and system integrations, and it's a much more complicated world now, and that makes the meetup a little harder to plan because you want to meet that raised bar.
And we raised the bar ourselves within the group by being one of the groups that video record all of our panel discussions. We got sponsorship for that we mentioned earlier, and they're available on YouTube for free. Just search on YouTube for NYC DAM and you'll find them. NYC DAM is based in Manhattan. We meet in Manhattan specifically, and you can find the meetup on meetup.com/NYC Digital Asset Managers. So we invite you to join if you have interest in digital asset management.
Come and give us ideas. Share ideas and share questions with us, because that's where the next presentations come from.
And also, thanks for all your support, because if nobody shows up, we can't do it.
It's all about the members.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. That's the community. It's not us. We just provide a soapbox, but if nobody's there to listen to whoever's on it, then there's no point.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more on digital asset management, log on to anotherdamblog.com. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to email me at anotherdamblog@gmail.com. Thanks again.